Hello everyone, and welcome back to STW Sports. I'm host Sam You're and today I'm joined by Cambridge United fan Callum Tofts. Welcome, Callum. A League One season is upon us. It begins in a week's time, just under a week's time now, 6 days. It's very exciting this time of year, always is when a new season's on the horizon. It feels like been quite a long summer, to be fair, without football. I've definitely missed the EFL seasons. I've watched it a bit while I was away in Spain last year, and it's definitely been going to be quite an entertaining one. I hope some big clubs in League One this season. Some good clubs came up from League Two. Some big clubs relegated from the Championship. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting season. First, Callum, before we do begin our predictions, going to go 24th to first in the table. How are you feeling going into the new season as a Cambridge fan?
Mixed emotions. I think considering we stayed up just last year on the last day, it was such a big thing for us to stay in League One, being a small club ourselves, and really had a really good first season in League One, and then had that bad last season. We just stayed up, thankfully, thanks to Burton keeping a goalless draw against MK Dons and Exeter beating Morecambe. But it's a tough one, losing some really key players: Mitov, Sam Smith, Harvey Nibbs, all going to bigger clubs, or big, especially some teams in League One. Lloyd Jones going to I'm trying to think of the Charlton. That's the one, and so it's a transition year for us. So you really don't know how things are going. I think we've made some good signings, but also feel like we still need a few more in, and hopefully we get some during this week before the start of the season. So it's considering some of the teams in this league, it's going to be a challenging year for us. But I think a lot of teams come down. A lot of teams came up from League Two last year. They're looking in the same position we are, quite small clubs. There's no really big clubs that have come up. So it's going to be a really interesting year, and I'm really looking forward to it. And next Saturday against Oxford at home is going to be a really enjoyable game.
Absolutely. Well, Callum, without further ado, we are going to begin with our League One predictions for the 23-24 season. Very exciting season ahead, but which team for you is unfortunately finishing bottom of the pile?
So really, I've kind of gone for any team really between 24th and 17th can be in that danger zone. It's really such a hard league to predict. So if I'm just going to put in, if your team's in the bottom four now, it means it could be anywhere between now and 24th and 17th really. But I've gone for the bottom place. I've gone for Carlisle United, a team that's come up. I'm not confident. I'm really not. There's some big teams in this, and I don't really see Carlisle having the stature to keep going. It's a really, we found that out last year, and Forest Green did as well, winning the league quite comfortably in League Two and then really struggling in League One. I can't see Carlisle, doing that well next year. I think they're going to be in a relegation battle, definitely. I don't know if, my predictions are going to go down, but they could survive, but I really can't see them staying up in League One comfortably next year. So they're kind of the one that I didn't really know where to put them in that bottom four, so I've kind of put them there, but I still don't think they're going to do that well.
Yeah, that's fair enough, Callum. That's again, we saw what happened with Forest Green, as you say, last year. I was amazed at. I know they lost a lot of players in the summer, Forest Green and the manager, but I was amazed at how badly they really did, considering how they came up from League Two the year before, albeit they limped over the line, to be fair. But either way, though, I'm very excited with this one. Very excited for this season. I don't think the team at the bottom will be as far adrift this year. In 24 for me, though, I've gone for Shrewsbury Town.
Okay.
So the reason is they've lost their manager, who they've had for a very long time in Cockerell. They don't really seem to have a direction in the transfer window either. The manager is very inexperienced, Matt Taylor. When I was working in League Two, he was at Walsall. He did all right there. He had done that lower mid-table. He wasn't great, but he wasn't bad either. He's never managed at this level, and I think that's going to be a problem. I just think it's going to be a really bad season for Shrewsbury. I think they've been in League One for a long time now. They've done really well to stay in the league as long as they have. But they've always been lower mid-table. They've never really pushed on. I know last season they had a good run, to be fair, and they had a pretty good season. But I've just got a feeling it's going to go wrong for them this year. I think Matt Taylor, again, he was a good player in his time. I think he's got potential as a manager. But I think for a manager who never did much at Walsall in League Two, to for him to go to a step up, I think is a big risk, and I just don't see it working out. And I think losing the stability of Cottrell as well, I'm just going to have Shrewsbury Town finish bottom.
It's an interesting choice, though, but I can see where you're going with that. It's really, I think I've come out the difference between some of those already kind of showing up. We'll see that in a bit, but it's I can see why they're down there, just purely because they're not really progressing. They feel very stale, so there's going to be a dip sometime, in my opinion. So my 23rd, Sammy there? Or
yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
My 23rd, I've gone for Northampton Town. It's an interesting one because they've got some really good some good players. Danny Hilton's there at the moment. They've got some good youngsters coming through as well. But again, I just feel with Northampton, okay, they've had a good pre-season. MK Dons as well, and had some, quite a good games really. But I'm just worried with Northampton, they're not improving the team. When you come up from a League Two, you need to improve because the stature of the clubs are so different. And I just feel they haven't done that this year. So it could be an interesting, I know John Brady's their manager is a good manager, and I think he's managed League One clubs before. I could be wrong on that, but I just feel the inexperience of them is just not going to get them that far this year. I'm sorry, Northampton fans. It's a good away game to go to the Cambridge fan, but I just don't think they're going to have the squad depth and the capability staying up this year.
Yeah, well, we're at an agreement, Callum, because I've also gone with Northampton Town. Similar reasons to yourself. John Brady is actually the 3rd or 4th longest serving manager in League One, and he joined Northampton when they were in League One back in 2021. And I think they got relegated. That wasn't his fault, to be fair, because by the time he went there, they were already in big trouble. But my thinking is, I just don't think Northampton have got they're like the yo-yo club between League One and League Two. They were so close to going up the season before last. Obviously, Bristol Rovers beat them won that final game like 7-0 or something against Scunthorpe, and then they lost in the playoff. They went up this season. For me, they're a club who are very, very good in League Two, but they're just not good enough for League One. I do think John Brady's a good manager for the League Two, but I don't think in League One he's going to do enough to keep them up. And I just think Northampton are in that cycle of very good in League Two, but not good enough for League One. So for me, they're 23rd place as well. We're at an agreement there.
Yeah, again, it's such a hard league to predict as well. But like I said, with these, they really kind of know they could finish 22nd, 23rd, 24th. But mine, it's such hard, to predict the bottom four. So we've got one agreement. So my next one, I don't know if we're going to real a team that.
Sorry, the audio was a bit quiet there.
That's all right. Is that better?
Yeah, it's better now. Yeah.
Cool. So my prediction for 22nd, is Fleetwood Town. A team that's they've dangled near the bottom for a while, and okay, they didn't have a bad season last year, but I still feel they haven't improved in the last year. It's a bit like Shrewsbury with you. They've kind of just stayed that bottom half of the mid-table, sometimes half of the mid-table, but I just don't feel they're going to have the capability to keep going, especially with such a reinforced League One this year. It's such a hard one to predict. I just feel their time's come now. Maybe it would do them good to be in League Two for a year, kind of redevelop, push on for next year. So unfortunately, Fleetwood Town's going to be my 3rd team to get relegated this year.
Well, once again, Callum, we're at an agreement for the 2nd time in 3 predictions. It's a bold one because Fleetwood had a very good season last season, 13th place. I think Scott Brown had a very good first season in English football. I just feel like with Fleetwood, again, they're a club who comes above their weight for a long time now. I've just got a feeling that it's not going to be this season for them. I think that they've got an all right team. They had a good season last year. But I just don't think Fleetwood. I just can see it being a season where it goes wrong for them, and I just think that they go on a bit of a bad run. It's hard to get out of that bad run once you go on it, and I think the inexperience of Scott Brown as well. I know last season did a good job, to be fair to him, but I just feel that Fleetwood are a team who they've been in League One for a while. They've done quite well in League One. I think they got to the playoffs a few years ago, back in 2020. So I think they've done quite well at their time in League One, but I've just got a feeling they're going to be a team who had a good season last year. I just think they're going to be one of them teams who just fall down. We see it happen a lot in the EFL, and I think Fleetwood are going to be one of them teams, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, we haven't spoke about these predictions either. I know it seems like we're getting a lot the same, but we haven't spoke about them beforehand. So it's a really interesting take on how we're both feeling the same. So hopefully we continue. So my next one, I've gone for Cheltenham Town, a team that came up with us a few years ago. A bit like they had they've been one of the surprise teams the last few. I've always kind of picked them to be down there, and I still have this year. So maybe they're going to prove me wrong again. I don't know, but I think losing their main striker this year, that's a big blow for them. And I can't, in this league you need to score goals, and I don't think they've recruited that well to replace him. I think it's Alfie Mays. Yeah, it's Alfie Mays that's left. I think he scored from the halfway line last year. And some of the some of the goals he scored is crazy. He will continue to score goals, and they needed to keep hold of him if they wanted to carry on or improve the team elsewhere to add goals elsewhere, and then can't always rely on one person. So that's going to be my biggest problem this year for them is the goals, and I just can't see them having it in them to stay up again without their main goal scorer.
Yep, exactly the same again. I can't believe it. 3 out of 4 in the bottom 4. I'm quite amazed because I thought having Cheltenham to go down was one of the more predictable ones, but I've still had them to be that last team to. And the reason is, I think Cheltenham obviously they came up in 2021 in the COVID season, and they've done really well. Again, that Alfie May's been such an important player. They lost their manager last season, didn't they? As well at the start with Michael Duff, he went to Barnsley, and now he's obviously gone to Swansea. And I think that losing him was a big, and I thought last season they'd struggle, but because they kept hold of May, I thought they'd stay up. I think that they'll still give it a good go. Cheltenham are a good club. They've got a lot of fighting spirit, and I think they've definitely proved they can hang at this level. But I do agree. You're not going to score goals at this level. We saw Morecambe's effect of losing Stockton, I think, last season. I know Cheltenham are a bit better than Morecambe, in my opinion, in a better position. But I just think, for Cheltenham, it's going to be one of them where I just think they're going to fight till the end, but I do think they'll fall a bit short, and it's going to be for me due to the lack of goals. But I'm going to say Cheltenham also. I've got to agree with you there. I think they're going to go down, the final team.
Yeah, so the team that I've picked just to stay up on maybe on the last day, who knows, it could do what, is Stevenage, a team that's just been promoted. Very, very like Stevenage side. They've always, played well, very, quite controlling football, quite physical as well, which is what you need in this league. They've had some, they've been on the up the last few years. They kind of dangled relegation a few years ago in League Two, and now they're really pushing forward. It's a team that I don't think many people predicted to go up this year, as into League One. So really fair play to them. So I think the momentum's a big part of that, and I just can see them just staying up. I think they're going to have the momentum this year going into it, and I think it's a good time to be a Stevenage fan. A bit like us a few years ago, team really no one predicted to go up. They did it, and fair play to Stevenage. I hope you guys enjoy League One, and the main thing for them this year, I think, for them to enjoy it. But if they can stay up, it's only a bonus for them. So, and I really do think with the physicality they've got, and they've got a few good goal scorers in their ranks, a good manager, a good system in place. They haven't lost many players, which is good. So I really can see them staying up this year.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I think Stevenage, like you say, did defy the odds to go up last year, to be fair to them. I think the appointment of Steve Evans, which I'll get to when I get to my Stevenage prediction, was massive. And that another thing I forgot to mention about Cheltenham, which I will briefly mention, is the manager, Wade Elliott, doesn't have any experience. It's another reason why I had them relegated. And so 20th for me, though, I've gone with Burton Albion. A lot of people I've seen having Burton to go down, but Burton are one of them teams, like, they always seem to stay up, like, even if they have a bad season. I remember under Hasselbank a few years ago, I think he came in and they were bottom, a bit like Forest Green were, and they still managed to win God knows how many games and stay up. I know Hasselbank's not there anymore. He obviously got sacked a while ago. But even the manager now they've got in, like, he seems like he's not too bad. I know last season was a bit of a struggle. I just think that they'll do enough to stay up. I don't think it'll be convincing. They will have a hard season, in my opinion, Burton, but they're always a club who manage to punch above their weight, and I think they will stay up, but it won't be pretty, but I think they'll just survive.
Yeah, I can see it's a good shout with Burton. They've been down there for ages, and you kind of, you never know. So it's always hard to tell. So the team 19th. I'm staying in London with this one. I've gone for Leyton Orient, another promoted team. I really like Leyton Orient as a club. You know what they do, how they play. It's a really interesting side. I didn't really know where to put them, so I kind of kept them. Well, I want them to stay up personally because I like the club as a whole, and I think they've got what they've been through and a lot of bad time to them, and it's a really good thing for them being in League One next year. It's such a hard thing to predict. I really could have put them, anywhere between wherever, 15th, 19th, 18th, wherever. So I think they can stay up. They've got a really good squad, some really good, good goal scorers as well, and a really solid midfield, I feel, as well. Some really good loan signs they brought in last year to really help them push forward. So I can see them staying up this year. I think it's still going to be a struggle for them, along with the other teams around there. But I think, the way they're playing and how they, really stormed League Two last year, pretty much, for the majority of it, they can, be quite comfortable.
Yeah, seems like I've got a bit more belief in the promoting teams than yourself, Callum, I think, because I've had them quite higher up the table, some of them. But 19th for me, I've gone with Stevenage, so very similar to what you said about them being 20th. Again, Stevenage really did defy the odds last year coming up. I think Steve Evans, look, he's a fantastic League Two manager. We all know that. Even in League One with Gillingham, we did a very solid job for a few years until that came to an end. I really like Steve Evans, and the reason I'm having Stevenage stay up is because mainly of Steve Evans. I think that at this level, even with Stevenage to go up the way they did last year, quite comfortably as well, in truth, I just think Stevenage are in a pretty good position. I don't think they're going to break into that anywhere near the top half of League One, but I think they'll be all right. I think that Evans will stay out the season, and I think that they'll just do enough to stay up, in my opinion. I think it'll go quite far. They'll be in the battle till quite late, but I think with the experience of Evans and his experience in the EFL, I think they'll be all right. And again, they're a club who right now have got a good reason to be optimistic. So I think that'll help them stay up as well.
Yeah, I think, it's one of them teams that you can't really know if they can have a really good season, they can have a really bad season. It's just so hard to predict. So I've kind of, especially with all four promoted teams, I put them in the bottom 7. So that kind of says, like you said, my faith in them. But to be fair, in the 18th, I've gone for my team, Cambridge United, in 18th. It's going to be a tough season again. I think we've ranked teams to get relegated, odds on favourites to get relegated, and that is everything for us again. But again, we were in 7th of April last year. We were 9 points off safety. A month later, we're safe. You just can't. You never know in football. The signings we've made, we needed that clear out. We brought in some really good players. We've got a lot of players come back off injury. We had a lot of injuries last year. Our main midfielder, Adam May, was out for 10 months, and he's still out now at the moment. It's, you can't write them. We had, last year, I think 7 defenders out at once. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. The January signings really helped us come through. But when we've thankfully re-signed them all, Michael Morris and Ryan Bennett, George Thomas has stayed, come back in. Okanabire, it should hopefully be fully fit. He scored 21 goals for Crewe 1 year, a couple of years ago. It's really, we've got the foundations there to do well. It's just if we're going to keep that consistency up, we've recruited well. I just feel like we're going to stay up again. It's just not with the most comfortable terms again. And I'm thinking, as Cambridge fans prepared for that, it's not going to be an easy year here. But I just can see us staying up and pushing forward in for another year of League One, which is all we can ask for, really. As long as we're in the league, that's all that really matters to me.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I definitely see the reasonings there. See, 18th place for me, I've gone with Port Vale. I think obviously Port Vale did all right last season. I think losing Darryl Clark was quite big, though, and I think the job Darryl Clark's done there has been really, really good. Again, when I was working in League Two a couple of seasons ago now, they got promoted, and it took them a while to get their rhythm that season as well. I think, but once they got going, and they're a good club, Port Vale. They've got a good stadium. I think again, they'll want to try and push up the table. They only came up from League Two just over a year ago. The only reason is I think their manager, Andy Crosby, is very inexperienced. I don't really think he's had much work at all, especially in the EFL. I'd be surprised if he lasts the season. I don't want to wish any manager gets sacked, but I can see Port Vale maybe getting rid of him and then bringing in someone to keep him up. I wouldn't be surprised if they take that sort of route. But yeah, I'm going to say Port Vale will survive again, but I don't think it'll be all that convincing. But 18th for me, I think another season in League One. That's all you can really ask for at Port Vale.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I've got a different reason for why I put a bit higher up in the table, so we'll get to that in a bit. But for me, 17th, I've gone for Exeter, a team that done quite well last year in their first year of League One again, but it's one of them where I think they're going to keep pushing forward. I think losing Giovanni Brown, one of their main players, and all that controversy of him, and I don't really know what happened there. He's now gone to Bristol, so it's quite an interesting year, for that, and seeing how Exeter regroup from that. It'll be an interesting year and see how they get on. I can't really see them having any problems. That's why I've kind of put them 17th. Okay, they're not going to be comfortable, but nothing really, too worrying for me. If I was an Exeter fan, you think, okay, we could get relegated, we could not. It's one of them where we'll be in the bottom half. As long as we stay at relegation, I think they'll be happy with that. I quite like Exeter as a club. They've always been quite a good team and had some really good players over the years. So, I never want any team to go down. That's the problem. You never want to see fans and supporters have to go through that relegation because we've all been through it ourselves. So, for me, I think 17th is a fair assessment. See where they get on next year without some of their main players.
Yeah, definitely. Exeter did very well in their first season, especially with the fact they lost their manager quite early in the season as well to Rotherham, didn't they? And to respond the way they did to that was very, very impressive and still finished mid-table. 17th for me, I've gone for Oxford United. Now, this is a bit of a surprise to a lot of people because Oxford, they seem to be a club they were knocking on the door to get promoted for so long, Oxford, but then last season they kind of struggled, I think it was. But obviously, they've brought in Liam Manning, who did do that 1 year at MK Dons. He did a fantastic job when they nearly got promoted. They were desperately unlucky not to get promoted a couple of seasons ago. I just don't think something seems right about Oxford, in my opinion. I want to see them do well, but I just think they're going to have a bad season. I don't think they'll get relegated, but I'm going to go for 17th. And I do like Liam Manning. I think he can be a good manager, but I just feel like obviously MK Dons also went down last year as well, which obviously was he there last year, Manning, at MK Dons, or did he leave?
Yeah, halfway through the season.
Yeah, he did. Sorry, yeah. I was trying to remember, but yeah, either way, I mean that obviously shows as well. But yeah, 17th for me. I think Oxford. It's not going to be a great season. They're the one team I'm having to really underachieve this year.
Yeah, I can understand that. I put them a bit higher, and it's such a hard one to predict because they have recruited quite well. But I'll get into that in a bit. When I get to mine. Yeah. The 16th, I've gone for Burton. A bit like you, it's a tough place to put Burton because they're always kind of floating near the bottom. They're always a team that you kind of think they're going to go down, and they never do. So I've kind of gone for, well, they're going to be around the middle. You never know, they could have a good season. It sounds like I don't have a lot to say on Burton. They're kind of one of them teams that are just always in League One, They're just floating around near the bottom. They're kind of, you have some good results, they sometimes have bad results. I remember last year, they really started, I think it was last year, they started like 4 games unbeaten, without a win point, and that was a really worrying sign. I think then Hasselbank got sacked after the Cambridge one when we beat them 4-3 or something like that. So it's a tough time for Burton. They're really kind of a team that, it's a hard one to predict for Burton. So I've put them for 16th. I don't think they're going to get relegated, but I can't see them doing anything amazing. I think they're going to just kind of be around that, bottom half.
Yeah, that's a fair one as well. I think again, most people probably have Burton in that sort of crowd. I've seen a lot of people having Burton to go down actually, but if you do have them to stay up, it's always difficult to know where to put them. Yeah. 16th though, Callum, I've gone with your team, Cambridge United. Again, a lot of people might think this is a bit weird, a bit higher up, but I think the way you stayed up last year, obviously 9 points adrift with a month to go, as you rightly point out. I think when a team stays up in such a dramatic manner, they usually kick on the next season. I've just got a good feeling about Cambridge. I don't know why. I know there's not a lot going for you with injuries last season and stuff like that, but I just have a feeling Cambridge might surprise people a bit this season, and I think you're actually going to be all right. I'm going to go 16th for a pretty comfortable mid-table season. I think Mark Connor's a very safe pair of hands as well. I think a lot of people have said that's the reason why they might have you to stay up, and that's the reason I'm going to use. I don't actually think you'll be in much relegation trouble. I think it'll be a mid-table season.
I'll happily take that. I'm more than happy to take yours over mine. So in 16th, I've gone for, this is, I think, an interesting one for me, and this is where I kind of dig out a bit. I've gone for Bristol Rovers. It's an interesting one because I know they're a team that probably people predict to be up there, but they're only in League Two a few years ago. Yeah, it's a really tough one to predict, and they didn't really kind of set the world alight last year in League One like people expected they would, and really kind of pushed on it up into the Championship and playoff phases. I just feel like they're going to be very stale this year. Kind of second season syndrome, possibly just kind of keep developing. I think that's what they need to do. Not a lot of these teams, kind of big teams, come down or maybe come up from League Two after some bad seasons. They want to push straight for promotion again. Sometimes it takes a few years just to develop a team again and really kind of push forward. I think that's what Bristol need to do. Just take your foot off the gas a bit. Just think of the team you want to build, especially if they keep the manager, kind of keep the same players around them and build a team like that way. I think that might be more beneficial for them moving forward. So I think Bristol's going to be quite a mediocre season for Bristol. So I've gone 15th for them. It could be different. They could even go either way, but I've kind of gone mid-table roughly for them.
Yeah, I agree. As in, they did come up a couple. They came up to a very similar way to what Bolton did. As in, they had a really poor start in League Two, but then once they found their rhythm, they did really well. And I think they picked it on the last day against Northampton. I remember. Well, they beat Northampton to third on the final day. So, sorry, what'd you say?
That was a 7-0 win, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, against Scunthorpe, who'd already been relegated by quite a distance. But yeah, I remember that. But but Bristol Rovers, again, they're an interesting one to predict. But 15th for me, I've gone very bold here. I've gone with Carlisle United. Very much higher than a lot of people will be putting them. My thing with this is, I think Carlisle are a very awkward club to predict this season. I like Paul Simpson. He doesn't have much experience, if any, managing in League One, to be fair. He's limited experience at this level. But from the difference between Carlisle now to when I was working in League Two is massive. Like, they've literally surprised everyone. Like, as in, they were pretty much a club who, I remember speaking to their media guys, and they were quite stale. They were worried about getting relegated when I went there in January 2022. So to now be promoted says a lot. And another reason is, I think Carlisle will be a horrible away day for a lot of teams. And I think they can make their home ground a bit of a fortress. Like, a little bit for similar reasons why Plymouth might do so well in League One as in last season. Obviously, not the same, level for Carlisle, but I think if you're travelling to Carlisle in the winter when it's a horrible Saturday afternoon and you're going all the way up north, I just think it's going to be a hard away day for some clubs. And I just think Carlisle have got a bit of a feel-good factor. It's a great stadium when it's rocking as well. I watched a bit of the highlights in League Two against Bradford in the semi-final, and it looks like it was rocking. So it's an awkward one with Carlisle. I think they're going to cause teams a lot more problems this year. This might go horribly wrong and they might go down, but I'm going to go bold and I'm going to say they're going to surprise and finish 15th.
That's a good prediction. It's a bit, you can never predict teams that come up. That's such the joy of this league. Any team on this could win it. In my opinion, that's the joy of the league, and it's such brilliant to see. So a team I've gone for 14th, I've gone for Shrewsbury, a team that I think they're going to do quite well this year. But again, they're a bit like Burton; they kind of just stay in the league. They don't really. I know they had quite a good year last year, and really kind of they're pushing for a bit for the playoffs, and everyone was kind of thinking, "Where's this kind of come from?" So for me, I think they're going to have a good season. 14th, nothing to be bad and nothing to shy away from as far as Shrewsbury fans. They maybe want to push on a bit more and kind of, really try and get the playoffs. I just can't see it this year. Maybe in a few years' time they might do. So a mediocre season for Shrewsbury. I've got not really a lot to say about these kind of middle teams. So it's an interesting one for sure to see where they finish at the end of the year.
Yeah, again, I mean, I'd love Matt Taylor to prove me wrong and do well at Shrewsbury, but unfortunately, I just don't see it happening. I really do think they're going to struggle. But you never know. Shrewsbury are an awkward one to predict. So 14th for me, I've gone with Wigan. Obviously, circumstances here are playing a part here. They are starting the season with an 8-point deduction, I believe, which is obviously one factor. Wigan, obviously, they had a miserable season in the Championship last year, and they kind of have become Wigan, a club who, they are a yo-yo club between League One and Championship, but with their difficulties off the field right now, I just don't see them coming up. I mean, they're already starting the season 8 points behind everyone. That's 3 wins alone. I think we're going to have enough quality to stay up comfortably. That's why I'm having them 14th in mid-table. But I don't see them getting anywhere near the playoffs. I think that it'd be a massive overachievement. And they have got Gary Caldwell, who was there as a player, wasn't he, Caldwell? And I do think that he's someone who knows the club well. But I just think we're going to have a stabilising season. And I think hopefully they can get their off-the-field difficulties sorted, and then they can obviously do that. I think they had a similar season when they came down a few years ago. They finished 20th, and then they got promoted the next season. So it's you can get that with Wigan in League One. You never know what you're going to get. But I'm going to play it safe and go mid-table.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. Wigan's, I'll get into mine in a bit. It's such a shame to see, a team like that having to go through that. But so for my 13th, I've gone for quite an interesting one. I've gone for Wycombe Wanderers, a team that didn't, they came down. I think last year they came down.
No, it was the year before. It was 2021. They came down.
Came down to League One and they got the playoffs the year before. They got to the playoff on the year before. Last year they didn't do the best really until they're kind of just like mid-table. I think it's going to be that kind of year again. It does seem like a transition period for Wycombe at the moment with, Gareth Ainsworth going, Akinfenwa going, some big Wycombe names, have all kind of parted ways, and really they kind of need to get a team around it together and push forward again. I don't know if Wycombe are going to get to the same heights they did before. It's such a hard one to predict. So I think, mid-table is a fair assessment for them and how they're moving forward as a club after such a big change up last year, or halfway through last year. So it'll be an interesting one for sure to see how next year goes for Wycombe, and I'll put them 13th, just a stable club in League One.
Yep. So for 13th for me, I'm going to go with Leyton Orient. They are a team who've just been promoted. I have a lot of faith in Leyton Orient this season. I feel like Leyton Orient are a club who went up very convincingly last season, and I feel like they're a club going in a really good direction. I like Richie Wellens. I think obviously he has had his difficult spells in League One in the past, no doubt. But I'm going to say, I'm going to go for Leyton Orient to have a good season, finish 13th. A little similar to Exeter maybe last season when they surprised everyone. Leyton Orient are a club on the up right now. They're going in the right direction. A lot of people have been tipping them to go up from League Two for a few years. So for me, I just think Leyton Orient are in a good position as a club to build. I don't think they'll do anything outrageous like get the playoffs, but I do think that 13th, they'll definitely take that this season. They were fantastic. They won 101 points in one League One with as well. That's very, very convincing. They're pretty much up there all season as well. I think Leyton Orient are a good club going in the right direction. I think they'll take League One really well. And I'm going to say they'll probably have a point in the season where they are doing really well and they maybe just fade away a bit at the end. But any Leyton Orient fan will surely take 13th. So I'm going to put them quite high.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment. I think mid-table, kind of above the relegation to playoffs, anywhere they could kind of finish up in there, in my opinion, is a fair assessment for Leyton Orient this year. So one after you, I've gone for in number 12. I've gone for Wigan. Kind of around the same area you've gone for. I think there's possibly another points deduction coming. I could be wrong with that, but I think they might be getting something more due to not paying player wages again or something like that. I could be wrong with that, but I'm sure I read something about it, and that could be another 8 points. That could really mess them up. If that comes through, I mean, we're going by what's going on now, so minus 8 points. So I think they've got a good team, but again, I think this year they need to take the time to get off the pitch stuff done, go again in a few years, really kind of get, take this as a kind of a free hit, if you will. They know they've got the team to go forward. They just need to get everything sorted, everything kind of balanced out, and then go again the year. No, they could prove us all wrong, get promoted this year. I can't see it with the points deduction and everything going on around the club, not really getting the fans in the stadium. I know that, don't get many at home anymore. So it's such a shame to see it, but I just think a stable season for Wigan is what's needed, and that's what I predict for them.
Yeah, that's a very fair one. I think we've both got the same views. I mean, obviously, we're going off an 8-point deduction, so if they do get more points deducted, it could be relegated. But right now, with 8 points, I'm going to say they'll still stay up, but I don't think it'll be. I think they'll stay up quite comfortably, but nowhere near the playoff. Well, for me, Bristol Rovers. You mentioned Bristol Rovers a little bit earlier on. I do like Bristol Rovers. I think this is their second season back in League One now. They've only got relegated. They're only in League Two for one season. I think Bristol Rovers have got something about them to do well. I don't think they're going to get the playoffs or anything, but a solid mid-table finish. As much as Joey Barton's obviously a controversial character, he is a good League One manager. He got Fleetwood to the playoff semi-final in 2020. He got Bristol Rovers promoted when they got relegated. He is a good manager at this level, Joey Barton, and I think that with a safe pair of hands he is, I think they'll be absolutely fine in mid-table. Don't see them doing any better than that, though, so yeah, I'm going to go middle of the park, 12th.
Yeah, it's a fair assessment, For me, in 11th, I've gone for Lincoln, a team that I think they lost 2 games at home last year all season. That, that in itself, you need a good home record in this league, and if that carried them last year, and I think I think if they didn't have that, they might have been down near in the bottom if they didn't have that such a good home record. I could be wrong with the 2. I know when we played them in February, they haven't lost, they didn't lose a home all season up to that point, which is a really impressive record for them. I think they're just a good, solid, team in League One. They've had some good runs, and since coming out of League Two, I think 4 or 5 years ago now, it's been very impressive for them to push forward. So fair play to Lincoln. I think mid-tables, I would take that as a Lincoln fan all day. Still pushing up the table as well. I think they're slowly, keep moving forward as a club, and a very stable League One club now is all you ask for. So mid-table for me, I think Lincoln's a fair assessment.
So, 11th for me, I've gone with Exeter City. A little bit of a shock, I imagine. And according to my research, Gary Caldwell's actually manager of Exeter. My apologies for saying he was Wigan manager. That's Sean Maloney. So I do take that back from what I said earlier on. Exeter for me. Again, I do like Exeter. Again, they were promoted the year I was working in League Two. The way they coped with losing Matt Taylor last season was fantastic. I think Exeter are going in a good direction right now. I think they've had a very good last couple of years. They're a club going up and up. And I just think Exeter are going to have a good season, I think, as well. Caldwell is a bit inexperienced, but I do think he's a steady enough manager to do well at this level. And I think that I'm going to say 11th. I think they're going to surprise people and finish. I don't think they'll get playoffs, but I certainly think they might be in the mix a little bit. And yeah, I'm going to go Exeter, a bit of a surprise package to finish in the top half.
That's an interesting one. I like that, but it's it's an interesting prediction, and I'm sure Exeter fans will definitely take that. So bring it to the 10th, who's just been breaking into the 10th position for me. I've gone for Port Vale, and then like you said about inexperienced manager, I think it's going to go the other way. We've seen it a few times. Inexperienced managers in this league really have a point to prove. I think Port Vale are one of them teams that got a really good backing at home, and I think when that place is going, they can really get some good results there. And I feel like trying to break into that playoffs position is a really good achievement for them this year, and I can see it happening. An experienced manager is going to put a completely different twist on how they play, how it develops, and really, I think the owners have brought the manager in to push the club forward, and I think maybe that's going to work. It might not, but I've gone for it working, you've gone for it not. So let's see how that happens. But it's going to be an interesting year for Port Vale, and it really can go one or two ways for them this year. And, I'm sure for them fans, they want it to go the best way it can.
Yeah, see, for me, I'm from quite near Port Vale, so I've always wanted to see them do well. So I really do hope they have a good season this season. But yeah, unfortunately, I've gone the opposite way. 10th for me, though, I've gone very similar to you, Callum. I've gone with Lincoln City. Again, Lincoln's a very interesting one. They've done so well since they've been in League One in terms of how their finishes. I mean, I was at Wembley 2 years ago when they played Blackpool and they lost in the playoff final, and I was so gutted when Michael Appleton left because I feel like he still had a story to finish there, and he went to Blackpool ironically and didn't do very well, did he? In the Championship, they ended up getting relegated. I know he weren't there the full season, but so it's a little bit of a shame that it ended like that. But Lincoln last season, as you say, their home form, I believe it was 2 games. It might be 3, but it's definitely a low amount of games they lost last season at home. Mark Kennedy did very well last season. 11th place wasn't too bad. I'm going for a similar season. I don't think they'll get playoffs, unfortunately, but I think they'll be solid. Top half, no problem. I think they'll do well. They're always a tough seed team to face, Lincoln. Yeah, I do think Lincoln are a good club, but I think they'll be in the playoff mix quite a lot, but I just think they are going to miss out and finish 10th.
Yeah, I can, I think that home record really helped them last year. I think it's going to be the same this year, I'm sure, for them. In 9th, I've gone for a bit of an interesting between when you put them. I've gone for Oxford. A team that I think had a bad season last year, but I can't see them happening again for them. I think a lot of Oxford fans would want to be back up there in the mix of the playoffs. I don't think they're going to get playoffs, but I think back up there, again, I think the year before they just missed out on playoffs the year before. I think it's going to be the same kind of season for them. I don't really know what happened to them last year. I mean, watching them play, they just seemed so unwanted to play for Oxford. It was a really weird season for them, and not like the Oxford were used to. So I think they're going to kind of, change of system, change of manager. I think it's a big season for Oxford. It can go one or two ways again. But I think they're going to go back to how they used to be, this year, and I'm sure they will want to be that as well. So 9th position, breaking into the top 10 would be Oxford for me.
Yeah, see, 9th place for me, I've gone with Charlton Athletic. Again, a lot of people having them to maybe do well this year. They have got, I believe, Dean Holden in charge now. He has managed, obviously, previously at Bristol City in the Championship, and I think he did okay, nothing special there. But I think that it's not bad. Charlton are a team who are a bit of a weird one. They obviously came down from League One back into Championship back in 2020, I remember, and they were, even then they were quite unlucky to go down. But they've not really done much in League One at all since they came down. They've been very much mid-table, not really going anywhere, and I think they'll be in the mix this year, but I'm going to say 9th. I think that they'll do a bit better. But I don't know with Charlton. I don't really know what sort of direction they're going in right now. And I'm just going to go for play it safe. Don't think they'll get the playoffs, but I think they'll have a better season maybe. I'm going to say 9th.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment. I put Charlton a bit higher and we'll see, I'll talk about that in a bit. So in 8th is a word I hate to use in this football language. It's Peterborough. I don't like talking about them. That's just, it's just rivalry, and I don't really watch a lot of their games. I don't really know what's going on with them. Fair play. I don't know how on earth they bottled it last year in the playoffs, and it's not me just being a Cambridge fan mocking them. I think any football fan can agree. How do they bottle a 4-0 lead going into the second leg and being up in extra time and still losing on penalties? That to me is football in its finest, and fair plays. That's why we love the game. I'm not going to talk about it, but it's it's one of them things. Peterborough are always a team up there. They've got a really, I don't know, their youth system's incredible. There's some of the players they've produced and selling on for profits. That, it's an incredible, well-run club, and we can learn a lot as a Cambridge fan. Cambridge off Peterborough, a lot of that. They've got an incredible goal-scoring record with, John Clark-Harris. Ricky J. Jones is there. He's a really good player as well. And, they just seem to find these hidden talents somewhere and make them into 20 goals a season, goal scorers and assists, and sell them on for 4 or 5 million. It's a very well run club, and I think around the playoffs again is fair for them. And I don't know if they're going to get playoffs. I've kind of gone for them just outside it. I reckon it will be between the two teams I've picked. 7th and 8th. 7th, 6th, and 9th, or whatever that is. So fair play to Peterborough for doing so well as a football club run. I just don't think they're going to get playoffs this year purely because it's it could have hurt them losing the playoffs that hard last year. So I think 8th place is a good assessment for them.
Well, we agree. I've gone for Peterborough 8th as well. Exactly the same reason as you. I feel like circumstances are going to play a part here. The way they lost last season, for me, it doesn't always work like that, to be fair. I mean, look at Luton. They got beaten in the playoffs and they got promoted. And look at Plymouth. They missed out on the playoffs last season. They got promoted, winning the league. So, it does go, but I just think it's going to go the opposite way.
Yeah.
And I do agree with you about Peterborough, about that, fantastic the players they bring through, and they do. But I am tired of them having Darren Ferguson in charge now. I think it's got to the point where it's been a thing for so long. They just need to move on from this and just be like, because nothing against him. He usually does a good job there, to be fair to him. I'm not saying anything against him. He usually does a decent job, but it's just been such a running theme now for well over a decade. And it's like, he's been there 4 times, I believe, now over his career. And I just think Peterborough this season, they'll be knocking on the door for the playoffs because, again, they're a very well-run club. And I feel like they will have their moments when they're looking good. But I just don't, I think they're going to miss out. I think the heartbreak of last year is going to catch up with them. And I feel like they're just going to miss out. Unfortunately, I'm going to go for Peterborough in 8th as well.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fair assessment. You just don't know with them. So a team I do believe that could, they could still get players. Along with the team I put in 7th, it's Portsmouth. A team that, haven't really done that well in the League One not done well, but they've not really hit the heights they wanted to in the last few years in League One. I feel this year they could really change it around, and some of the signings have made some really good signings. They've got a good manager, a brilliant stadium, and a brilliant fan base as well. I really like going to Fratton Park. It's such a good stadium to go to. It's, a really interesting year for Portsmouth. A lot of people have predicted them to finish like top 3. I don't think they're in that level yet, but I definitely feel they're going to be knocking on the door of the playoffs and very surprised a lot of teams this year. And I think it's a fair assessment of them finishing 7th.
Yeah, so 7th for me, I've gone for Reading. So a lot of people will find this interesting, but this is Reading's first time in League One for over 2 decades. I believe the last time they were in League One was back in about 2000, 2001. Long time as Reading have been down here. I am playing. In fact, they've got a lot of difficulties on and off the field, haven't they? They actually started the season quite well in the Championship last year, to be fair, under Paul Ince, surprisingly. But then once they fell off, it was kind of inevitable. And obviously the points deduction as well, I believe they had. I just think Reading are just going to narrowly miss out. It's going to be tight. And I do think Reading are going to have their moments. I think they've just hired Ruben Selles, who, again, over his career has done all right, to be fair to him. Obviously, he was at Southampton last season very briefly, I think, as well. He was their manager. I know it was unfortunately, but he has got that experience of managing in the Premier League. I know it wasn't a good experience because Southampton got relegated convincingly, but I just feel like I think it will work in some ways for Reading, but I'm just going to have them to miss out. I think that the League One playoffs can be very difficult this year. And I think Reading will go a bit like Derby last season. They had the same, didn't they? Finish 7th, didn't they? And I think that was their first season down. Similar to Reading, in my opinion. I think they'll do well enough, but I just think they'll miss out, unfortunately. I think it'll be quite heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I think, Reading are such a hard team to predict this year because of everything going, a bit like Wigan, but Reading haven't had any implications on them yet, so it's hard to kind of predict whether they're going to finish. For me, just hitting into the playoffs, I've gone for Charlton, a team that's, I think, like you said, they've been kind of not really hit the ground running really in League One since they come down. I think this could be the year. They've reinforced, quite well over the pitch. It's going to be an interesting year for them. I just feel I think they're going to push forward this year a bit more and definitely get playoffs and kind of see where things go from there with them. I can't see them winning the playoffs, but I just, I can see them getting at least to the semi-finals this year and, see where they go from there. So it's an interesting year for Charlton. I think it's kind of make or break this year because if they don't get playoffs again, the fans are going to be quite annoyed with them, I think, in my opinion, and really want them to keep pushing forward. So I think they're going to get playoffs this year. So 6th for Charlton for me.
6th, I've gone Blackpool, another team who came down from League One last year. The main reason for this is they do have Neil Critchley again, and he did get them out of League One only 2 years ago when they went up, obviously, in 2021. It's a weird one because there was so much optimism around Blackpool when they actually got promoted in 2021. They went up to the Championship, did really well in their first season. I still don't know why Critchley left to go on Aston Villa's backroom staff. That decision really irritated me, and it's generally relegated them. So it's like, I really don't understand and he's back there now anyway, so it's a really baffling decision. I do think Blackpool, it won't be plain sailing, it never is for a club who comes down, but I just think Blackpool have got a bit of a know-how, and I do think they'll edge into the playoffs. I don't think they'll win the playoffs, but I think they'll get in the playoffs again. I think they'll edge out Reading in that 7th spot, and not going to be as convincing, in my opinion, with obviously Critchley back, but I think they'll still do well enough to get playoffs. They've got a good team still, and I think it's a very tough place to go, Bloomfield Road, and I'm going to have 6th place Blackpool.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment, for them. I think, like you, I'll get onto them in a second. So for me, if in 5th place, I've gone for Reading, a team that it's so hard to predict for them. I think they're going to get playoffs purely because, I don't know how they're signing. I think they got a transfer embargo, or did, and now they're signing players left, right and centre. They've bought, even from Cambridge, they bought Sam Smith and Harvey Nibbs off us. Okay, they got them for free. So it's, but they don't have to pay their contract. Again, there's 2 very good, well-proven League One players already that I know of. I don't know who they brought in or really what we've read in. So, but I can see them doing well. They're a good side and a team that I think they're bigger than the league in one of them kind of position. You kind of hear Reading, you think it's got such a big team come down. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on this year. And I think they're going to get playoffs. Arguably they could win it. Who knows? It's such a hard time to predict the playoffs, and you never really know what's going to happen with them. But I think playoffs would be a requirement for Reading this year, and I'm sure they'll be looking to get that if they can this year.
So 5th for me, finally, I've gone for Portsmouth. It's been a long time coming. They've been knocking on the door of the playoffs, Portsmouth, for a long, long time. I feel like they've got in a new manager in John Machinio, and I'm going to go a little bit contradict what I said earlier. He doesn't have much experience in management, but I've just got a feeling that it's going to go the opposite way, and I think this is what Portsmouth need, a fresh face in the dugout to take them forward. Portsmouth have been so close to the playoffs for so many years. Like, they're always there until the last few weeks, and then they lose it. This year, I'm going to say Portsmouth will get in there in 5th, and it's going to be very interesting to see how they do in there as well, because I think that they haven't been in it for a long time, the playoffs, I don't think. Oh, no, that they were in it a few years ago, actually. Yeah. They never quite managed to get there, Portsmouth. But this season, I'm going to have faith in them and say they will finish 5th and they will make it into the playoffs. I think this Mourinho appointment is going to be good, and I think they're going to have a good season. So playoffs for me.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment for them, and it's really, kind of like I put them 7th. They could easily get playoffs in my prediction. It's just such a they're such a good team, and I think they deserve playoffs at least this year. For me, in 4th, I've gone for Bolton. I'm going to go out and also say Bolton will win the playoffs. Bit of a bigger one, but I think for me, Bolton really done well last year, and really they play such nice football as well. Got a lot of admiration for Bolton, how it's considering where they were a few years ago to how they are now. They're really pushing up to the Championship again. They had a really good end to last season as well. Brilliant stadium, good fans as well. I've got really nothing bad to say about Bolton and how their clubs run and how it is now anyway. I think they're really going to push on this year, and some of the players have got a brilliant, they score goals, they can defend really well. Good manager as well. I think Ian Everett's still there, isn't he? I could be wrong, but yeah,
he is, yeah.
Really still, AFL proven manager. I just think it's going to be this year for Bolton to go up through the playoffs.
So 4th for me, I've gone for Barnsley. Now, this is a bit of a bold one because a lot of people aren't really backing Barnsley. I think they finished 4th last season as well, if I'm right, under Michael Duff. He's obviously gone now. It's a difficult one because this could go horribly wrong for Barnsley. They obviously only came down, not last season, the season before in 2022. The year before that, they got to the Championship playoff semi-final. So it's been a mad few years for Barnsley, to be honest. I do think they're going to give it another go, Barnsley. I think that obviously their manager, Neil Collins, don't think he's ever managed in England before. That's a bit of a risk. And he's managed in the US for a few years, maybe, but that's a difficult one. But Barnsley are always good in League One. They always seem to be up there no matter what. And I think that it'd take a bit of a disaster for Barnsley to not get in the playoffs. So I'm going to say they'll finish 4th. They got to the playoff finals last season, and I think they're going to give it another go again. I think they're a strong club, Barnsley, at this level. They always do well in League One. So for that, I'm just going to go quite safe and say they'll get the playoffs. Yeah,
I think that's a fair assessment. For me, in 3rd, I've gone for Blackpool. A bit like how you're saying, they're very, strong side, and it's a good, it's a very lively stadium as well in Blackpool, and I'm sure a lot of fans were looking forward to going down there as well, especially Suffolk Cambridge fans. We don't really get to go to Blackpool for a weekend for football. It's one of them. It's it can be an enjoyable away day, and I think for Blackpool they're really quite a strong team. They're a Championship League One team. They're very much, like you said, a bit of a yo-yo kind of club. Only in the Premier League, I think it's 10 years ago now, maybe 11, 12 years ago
12
now.
Years ago, they got relegated from Prem. Blackpool did, yeah.
Yeah, so I know it's quite a while ago, but still, a Premier League team within the 2000s. Yeah, it's still a good side, very well backed. I know we've got some good fans as well, and I'm sure they'll travel in their thousands as well down to other clubs. And I can just see them being around in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to win it, but I think around that kind of playoff area is good for them this year.
Yeah, so 3rd for me, I've gone for Derby County. So I don't think they're going to do it the easy way like people are predicting. Obviously, last season, desperately unlucky to miss out on the playoffs. I do think Derby are going to come back stronger. Obviously, Plymouth happened to them the year before. Look how they came back. They won the league with 101 points. My thing is with Derby, I just think that they are going to go again. And I think that it's going to be, they're going to push up the table. But I think the top 2 is going to be very, very strong this year. And there's one team who are going to amaze you I've got in the top 2. And for anyone ticking the teams off, are going to be thinking, how has he not said this team yet? And I've got my reasons, which I'll get to. But yeah, so Derby, it's going to be a good season. They'll be right up there, in my opinion. I know they obviously got relegated a couple of seasons ago. They're in a bit of a better position as a club now as well. They did well enough last season. It wasn't convincing. They had a very difficult circumstances again. I'm going to say Derby will do all right. I'm going to go for a 3rd place finish in the playoffs. So my playoff winners out of the 4 teams I've selected, I'm going to go with Derby. I think Derby will win it. I think that, they've suffered a lot of playoff heartbreak in the Championship over the years. But I do think Derby, for me, they're a strong team. They'll miss out on the top 2. But I think there'll be a bit of a gap between them and 4th place. And I think they'll prove their quality in the playoffs.
Yeah, I can understand that. So my 2nd, I've gone for Barnsley, a team that, in my personal opinion, and this is generally my opinion, what I saw watching every game last year as a Cambridge fan when them playing us, they were the best team on the ball last year and off the ball, in my opinion. I think Barnsley were underlooked last year as a football club, and they were very, very unlucky to be beaten in the playoffs last year. I think top 2 for them is a very achievable thing. I know they've lost their manager, but you know, it's a very strong team still. They've got a brilliant fan base. They play some really attractive football. They can defend well. I just think they're going to be too much for the other teams below them this year not to get top two. I think there's one team, and I've, you know, like I said, it's quite obvious who I haven't said yet who will get first, but I just feel like Barnsley will get, you know, top two this year and go up to the Championship, where in my opinion, I think they should belong.
Yep, so second for me, Bolton Wanderers. Massive, massive fan of what Ian Everett's done there. Not just Ian Everett, the club in general. I remember League Two when they had that terrible start. They were like 18th. They lost to Port Vale at home 6-3 at Christmas in 2020. The turnaround's been incredible. Like, I went to report on their game against Fleetwood Town at the end of the season before last, and they finished 10th that season. And this season, I just feel like, you know, they've improved every year under Ian Everett. They've done fantastic every year. I'm going to say second. I think automatics for me. A little bit similar to Ipswich last year, really. I think obviously Bolton lost in the playoffs last year to Barnsley, but I just think this season they're going to come back stronger. They're a club on the up, Bolton. It's so good to see them on the up again as well. And I just think for me, they've just got that thing now where they're improving every year. They're a bit like Coventry were when they were coming through the leagues. You can just tell there's a feel-good factor. Good things are happening. A good manager who looks like he's there to stay. I'm going to say Ian Everett, second place finish at Bolton, and they'll be back in the Championship.
Yeah, well, I think we've both got Bolton to go up, just not in the the same ways. You know, I think Bolton is such a well-run club now, and it's just good to see. So, in first place, I've gone for Derby County, a team that, in my opinion, it's Derby. You know, they're such a big club. They've got everything. I think everything's sort of behind the scenes now out for them financially and everything like that, which is really good to see. You know, as a football club, they're well run. They played some really good games last year. You know, but I think last year it was a bit of a shock for them coming down. You know, and kind of getting used to League One and everything. I think this year they might show their class a bit more. And you know, I think they brought in I can't remember how many signs they brought in last year. It was crazy. And I think this year they're going to really kind of push forward and just, I think they're going to take the league by storm this year and really prove their class and why, they're such a big club. And I think they deserve to be back in the Championship after everything they've been through, sadly.
Yeah, see, my number one is a call, and this could go awfully wrong. And it's such a bold prediction because I feel like, there's a lot of caveats I've kind of done to try to make it possible. My first place, I've gone for Wycombe Wanderers. And the reasoning is, I don't think Gareth Ainsworth's lasting long at QPR. And I don't think this Wycombe manager's lasting long either. So I think he'll get sacked at QPR and he'll come back to Wycombe and it'll be a feel-good story. And I think Wycombe, I've just got a feeling something's gonna happen there this season. Don't know what it is. It might be my heart speaking a bit more instead of my head, but I just don't know. Like, I've got a feeling with Wycombe, something romantic might happen there this season, and I think that the Ainsworth leaving didn't feel right, and I think that for me, he belongs at Wycombe, and that's what I can see happening next season. But it's a call, and it probably won't happen. But obviously, football fans can dream about romantic stories. But that's what I'm going to see happening.
I tell you what, if it happens, go and put the lottery on. If that happens, I'm impressed with that prediction. That's a bold choice, and if it comes off, we'll look back on this time next year and be like, this is what happened,
Yeah, because I'm just looking about that Wycombe and this manager they've got right now. I know they need to move on from Ainsworth in a way, but Ainsworth's not doing well at QPR. He had a terrible stint at QPR. Like, QPR are a club in general, a bit of a mess. I just think if he's available, it'd be like Derek Adams at Morecambe a couple of seasons ago. If he's available, I just think they're going to come calling. And I just think the romanticism of it is just calling for a story like this to happen. I think it would happen quite early in the season. So I don't think Ainsworth's going to last long at QPR. I think they have a bad start. It'll probably be gone by like October. And then I can just see it happening. I can just see Wycombe But if it does happen, even if they go up with this, even if they think they win it, might be a bit bold. If
he just goes back, that's the impressive prediction. It's like Darren Ferguson at Peterborough. You can never get away from the bloke at there. It's one of them where it's he's built for the club and he's such a nice guy as well. And
I think as well, Wycombe had their season in the Championship, yes, but it was a bit difficult. Like, they very nearly stayed up, didn't they? They did such a good effort of it. Obviously, there was no fans in the stadium that year either. I just feel that was a bit of, and they got to the playoff final only over a year ago and they lost to Sunderland. It's like, there's still an unwritten story, a bit like when Appleton was at Lincoln, as I mentioned. There's a bit of an unwritten story there still. And I just feel that, he belongs at Wycombe Ainsworth, and I just hope it happens. And I really hope they get promoted, and it'd just be an amazing story. But yeah, that's what I'm going to go for. So Wycombe and Bolton as my automatics, Derby as my playoff winners, Cheltenham Town, Fleetwood Town, Northampton and Shrewsbury all relegated. That's my predictions. And obviously you've touched on yours too, Callum. But yeah, that's our League One predictions for 2023-24. I can't wait for the new season.
I think starts Friday. No, next Saturday properly.
Next Saturday, yeah.
The League One starts, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching that. It's going to be fantastic. So, yeah, that ends it, I guess. But before we go, Callum, we're going to do one last prediction. I hope you've thought about this a bit. It's going to be about the Golden Boot winner, Boot winner, and also possibly manager of the season.
I think for me, as much as I hate to say it, Golden Boot winner, I'm going to go Clark Harris again.
Yeah, that's fair.
I just think the guy's. It's weird. He never plays well against us. He's never scored against Cambridge, and I will hold that to him till the day he dies because he's, we both, but he just seems to score all the time, and he's a great striker. I know quite a few big clubs want him and everything, so I just can't really see it happening. Managers, it's a tough one. I mean, I think the way you're going, I think Gareth Ainsworth's going to be manager of the season.
Yeah, well, if he wins on the league and goes back, it's going to have to be him. So.
I think for me, I'm trying to think of teams that are not going to predict to do that well, but not, I'm going to think Ian Evatt. If
Simpson gets Carlisle 15th, that's a very good season, to be fair, as well. So he's I'm
going to say Ian Evatt. He's been there. I think he's the second longest team manager there.
He is. Yeah.
So I think Mark Bonner's up there. I'm sure he is.
Mark Bonner is the longest.
Yeah. Oh, he is. Yeah. I'm just looking it up now. He's the longest. Yeah.
Yeah. Then it's Evatt, I think it is, and there's also Brady's up there.
And then Brady's 2 years, 5 months, just behind Joey Barton. So I think Ian Evatt for me. I think if he's going to get Bolton promoted, I can see him winning the manager of the season. Through the playoffs, such a big changer, and what he's done for the club's brilliant. And I really like him as a manager.
Yeah, so I'm gonna Golden Boot win is difficult because to be honest, I'm looking at the clubs who have even had to get promoted, and I don't really know they've got a top striker who's going to win it. So to play it safe, I'll also go with Clark Harris, even if I'm having to for 8th. That seems quite unrealistic if he wins it and they finish 8th, but it does happen sometimes. To be fair, and obviously, my manager of the season has got to be Gareth Ainsworth. So I'm predicting a manager who's not even currently in this league. So that's a very, very bold call. But say if it doesn't happen with Ainsworth and he doesn't go back, I'm also going to go with Ian Evatt because if Bolton get automatically promoted, it's Ian Evatt either way. Because I know that they got the playoffs last season, but Bolton, so they've looked like they're a team progressing every year. So yeah, I'm going to say Bolton for me. I'm going Ian Evatt for me. If my Ainsworth story doesn't come true, it'll be Ian Evatt.
Yeah, I think there's a fair assessment. You can't really go wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, can't wait for it to begin next week. And let's revisit these at the end of the season. And if Ainsworth's gone back to Wycombe and won them the league, then that's going to be the I don't know what to say, to be honest.
We'll cross that in this time next year if that happens.
Yeah, but I hope QPR don't start well now. I'll be like, it's never going to happen if QPR actually do well.
He'll get promoted with QPR now.
I know. Oh, God, can you imagine? He gets promoted with QPR after all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. But yeah, either way, thanks, Callum, anyway. Appreciate it for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'll see you next time.
Brilliant. Thank you.